Welcome. It is wonderful to connect with you. We are going deep, talking about how to uncover any subconscious blocks that prevent you from living in abundance and opulence. Thank you for tuning in. I am Dr. Andrea Pennington. I am Managing Director for Make Your Mark Global, where we publish and train authors, speakers, healers, transformational coaches, as well as emerging psychedelic luminaries, so that you can take their message to the global audience to help in the healing and transformation of our planet. So, a little bit about my background. If you are new to this channel, just learning about me, I have had 20 years of professional experience in broadcast media, working for some of the biggest brands on the planet, including Discovery Channel, Oprah Winfrey, CNN, been on Dr. Oz, The Today Show, ITV This Morning in the UK, and a whole host of really popular magazines like Essence and Newsweek and Black Enterprise. The list goes on. And one of the things that I happen to love is helping other people to succeed, especially in business and entrepreneurial affairs. So wonderful to have you all here. I see some people typing into the chat. Very good to have you here. Anthony's tuning in. Dahlia Denise, welcome. Glad that you are tuning in. So let's just get right into this, because I've been speaking in a series now about self-sabotage and the shadow. And the shadow is just that part of our psyche. It's part of the unconscious that holds or contains the parts of us that we're not proud of, that we kind of deny, disown, that we feel shameful about, or that other people told us was just not acceptable. And based on what's going on in your subconscious mind, you may have some experiences like a psychological block or a ceiling to how much money that you'll allow into your life. And for example, I hear people say, I just can't seem to break 6 figures per year. Does that apply to anyone else out there? Sometimes when we have hidden time bombs or psyche bombs, we might find that, I have so many assets. I have my talents, I have my skills, my training, all of these resources. But for some reason, I can't seem to manage all of them to increase my income. Does that sound familiar for you? Or maybe you already know that there are repeated instances of self-sabotage in your life where you may not even recognize it until the damage is almost, there. And then you realize, my God, it's like I'm my own worst enemy. Like just as I think I'm about to break through, like something always happens. Can you relate? Well, there are all sorts of patterns that we see. One that was real for me was something we call like this vicious cycle, where greater success would lead to greater overwhelm. And that would be when we feel like we're kind of on a hamster wheel. And every time we get some momentum and we're starting to earn more, finally, we just kind of break down. So I'm curious to hear what sort of money blocks or situations have been real for you. The other thing that a lot of people will see is perfectionism comes in. It's like you sitting there and you're like, I know I could have launched this book, this podcast, this coaching program. I could have done that TED Talk, but you just can't shake the feeling that, oh, it's just not right yet. It's just not ready yet. Or, we have so many times that we find ourselves just tweaking and tweaking things to perfection. And in the meantime, the opportunities are passing you by. So why does that happen? Why does that happen? Well, what I know is whether the behavior is procrastination, like a compulsive need to prove yourself, really getting into giving away your time for nothing, or undervaluing and underpricing yourself, I know that there are some psychological blocks in the subconscious mind. And if you're new to this work with me, as an integrative physician and acupuncturist, I lead people through a process to discover and identify the source. Because you could go take a confidence course and be like, I'm going to puff myself up. I'm going to go in and ask for that raise. You could come to my speaker training and learn all of my skills on how to become an effective speaker. But when it comes time to start receiving from that, will you be able to receive? Will you launch that product? Will you raise your price to the level it needs to be? Well, the yes or the no doesn't depend on your outward behaviors. It actually depends on the thoughts going on in your mind, the unconscious beliefs that are there, as well as your identity. And for me, identity trumps everything. So at your core, who do you believe you are, and what do you say you are worthy of? Are you worthy of success? Are you worthy of a higher pay rate? Are you worthy to receive? All of that is tied to your identity. So you see, your identity is what informs your beliefs, and your beliefs are what inform the thoughts, including the self-talk. And that's what informs your actions or your behaviors in the outside world. So, how could you tell if there's something in your subconscious that might be blocking you? Because some of these beliefs or identities might have been installed like computer programs before you even had language. Yes, it's true. So, one of the ways that you can start to identify whether or not you've got something in the background is first, let's think about what you really, really want to experience. If we were to wave a magic wand, right? A magic wand in the future, 1 year from now, and you were earning what you want to earn, you were receiving that money with gratitude, not refusing it, not saying, oh, no, 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 receiving. So imagine, you can close your eyes if you'd like. Just imagine that we could wave a magic wand, ding, and we're 1 year in the future. And you are now earning whatever that magic number is for you. See yourself receiving with joy and gratitude. What would be different about your lifestyle? Would you have moved into a different place? Are you riding a better car? What's your wardrobe like? Have you paid down debt? Get a sense for everything that that vision entails. And as you sit with this imagination, who else is around you? Are you working with clients? Or are you just on your own? Are you living the laptop lifestyle like me, anywhere there's Wi-Fi? In this vision of you living abundantly and sharing your gifts fully and wholeheartedly, are you on stages? Are you doing interviews? Are you on TV? Are you standing on that red dot for a TED Talk? So when we do this visualization, it's more than just visualizing. What I'm inviting you to do is sensualize. So using all of your senses, smell, sight, taste, touch, vibration. What does the energy in your body feel like, knowing that you are now receiving the money that you really, really desire and deserve? You're not turning it away. You're using your gifts. What does that feel like in your body? Now, if it's hard for you to imagine that, then you might have what we call the yeah, but syndrome. It's like, yeah, I want that, but yeah, but. So remember when we talked about some of the thoughts that might be blocking you? When you tune into this vision, ask yourself, what's blocking? What are my buts? The yeah buts. Start to get a sense for any of the thoughts or feelings that come up. So some people will have a thought come up that's like, well, I mean, who really needs 6 figures anyway? I mean, I'm a spiritual coach. I don't need that much money. Or maybe you're like, oh, I don't really know if people would pay me for my talents. Maybe you have the thought, I don't know, I'm waiting for somebody to rescue me. What comes up for you? Quite often we'll find that we can just tune into the body to find out what energy comes up when we start to think about abundance. What feelings and what thoughts, what ideas come up when you think about you in that vision. Now, when we start to identify like what blocks us, your intellectual mind might be able to work out the numbers and say, yeah, I could really feel good about having a six-figure salary that would allow me to live the way I want to live. You might have identified some yabbats, and we can get into that. You might actually need to go back through your timeline and find out what has been your family's relationship to money. Because we, as little precious humans, come into the world and we absorb the energy and the vibration in the form of a sort of mental movie about what's safe and what's not safe. And that forms the basis of our identity. So, all of those beliefs and the self talk. So, for example, if you happen to have parents who were war survivors or Holocaust survivors, or your grandparents, and they talked about the Great Depression or post war times, they may have had a bit of a scarcity mentality where they hoarded things, they saved things, they put plastic over things so that it wouldn't get ruined. And that mentality gets passed down to us, even without saying it. So you might have to look through and see, what were my family's beliefs about money? Or what did they just outright say to you? I mean, the most common one is, who do you think I am? You think I'm made of money? Money doesn't grow on trees, you know. So what kind of languaging did you hear around money? If you wanted to ask for something, was it easy or was it difficult? So I often tell the story that for me, I had a lot of programming around safety and money. My father, based on the way he grew up in a pretty poor family coming out of Tennessee and growing up in DC, he was told that the only security would be to get out of there, go and get an education, get a job with a pension. That's the way of security. So for me, I heard that message a lot, that, focus on school, focus on grades. Every time I wanted to do something creative, whether it was band or piano or dance or theater or even running track and cheerleading, there was always this like pressure, like, but how are your grades? So the message that I got was, in order for me to do something fun and outgoing, I need to make sure my grades are good. So the message that I got was, security means getting a job, being employed by someone else. So what do you do when you're a natural born entrepreneur and you've got this program in there that says, no, 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 you're supposed to be working for a corporation or something? And my father literally said that to me. At the time, this was in the early 2000s, I had just reached the $2 million mark in my business. And I was on TV, had just done Oprah, published my first book, had my wellness center, and I was working for Discovery Health Channel as the medical director. And do you know, he said to me, like, why don't you just work for a hospital? Like, my mind, this was literally a mind-blowing experience for me. And it was the moment that shifted my understanding that I will never have his approval, because he operates from a different paradigm. His operating system doesn't fit my operating system. And every time I kept trying to force myself into it, that's when dis-ease was experienced in my body. And so when he said that, it was a light bulb moment. I mean, I had people coming to my wellness center from all around North America. Johns Hopkins were sending me people from Howard University, their doctors were sending me clients. I'd been on Oprah, got the book. Like, how much more external validation do you need to see that I'm okay? And it was in that moment that I realized I've got to live for me and follow my path in order to be fully happy and in order to be sustainable. Because at that point, I was doing so much. Just I had this compulsive need to prove myself and always looking for external validation that it left me feeling very shaky in my confidence. So, despite all of those accolades, I was walking around with imposter syndrome. Because of all of that programming from early in my childhood, I had this fear that, okay, someone's going to find out I'm not enough. This isn't enough. And what burst that bubble was my dad finally basically saying, yeah, you have all of that, but it's not enough. Go get a secure job. And so that was the beginning of unraveling and recognizing these are programs installed in the subconscious mind, and we can do things and take steps to break free of them. Now, that can be really hard because if you're going against the family paradigm, if you're still interacting with that family, you're going to keep bumping up against their paradigm. And for many of us, it's hard. It's hard to break free from conformity, whether you're conforming to your parents' ideals or you're conforming to society's ideals. And in my case, I had two other paradigms on me: the American Medical Association and their ideal of what it means to be a doctor in America, and the media. I was on TV every single day, and I had this sort of media overlord on me as well. And so it can be difficult to go against the grain and follow your heart, but it's possible when you go in and you debug your own operating system, take out those faulty programs. So it begins with identifying what those programs are. For me, it was, you got to be doing something in order to receive love or validation. It's very externally driven. Like, you got to have good grades or you're worth nothing, right? So, what are some of the thoughts that have been bouncing around in your mind? Have you been undervaluing or underpricing your services? Maybe because you fear that, okay, even though other people charge more, I might not be able to compete with them, so I'm going to charge less. You know, it's been an interesting study about people who win the lottery. Have you heard about this phenomenon that people who have a faulty money mindset can get a ton of money and then blow it? And that speaks to these challenges that we have in the subconscious mind. So, in other words, it means if you don't fix the money mindset, these subconscious beliefs, your fundamental identity and what you deserve in the world, it doesn't matter how much money we throw at you. You'll likely go back to your baseline of what's comfortable. So, what do you all say? What do we have in the chat here? Shandana says, I just keep feeling a block. I can feel that the universe wants to give me everything, but I'm afraid, and it's an unaware territory. So the fear causes self-sabotage. Thank you so much for sharing that. So what we want to do now, if it feels safe to you, is to tune into that fear. So as you're standing there saying, I know, I have this feeling that God or the universe wants to give me something. Or maybe you have a feeling that there's something inside of you that you could bring out to the marketplace that would earn a significant amount of money. And yet at the same time, you also feel fear. So that fear, Shandana, of the unknown territory, the question I would ask you is, when was the first time you were afraid to step out into the unknown? And see if you can tune in. What comes up for you? It might be a scene from your childhood. It might be recent, but when did you have this fear of stepping into the unknown? Another way to say that is, when was the first time you can remember that you had this inkling that you were not enough to face uncertainty? Or when was the first time that you had this feeling like, I know the universe wants to give me it, but it's so uncertain. I don't trust the universe to give me what I need. Now, I'm just giving you some examples. We don't know what's going on in the subconscious mind. That's why we're here. We're trying to be the detective to identify. If you're interested in perhaps joining me for a live masterclass or a series of masterclasses where we can actually take your questions so you can come on and get some support live, I'm going to type this into the chat. I am hosting some live masterclasses on Zoom, so that way you can be seen and be heard, ask questions, and get some support. It's popped over into the chat. All right. So the questions you're asking yourself is, when was the first time I felt this? Where did this program come from? And yeah, so Sandra D, I felt shame every day. My poor mother, rest in peace. So what's going to be interesting for you, Sandra, is to go back and understand, where did that shame come from? Was the shame associated with things that she said or just her overall demeanor? Like, in other words, we can sometimes pick up on things even though people don't tell us specifically, right? So Sandra D says, when I threw away trash, my war survivor mother would become very angry and say things like, oh, you think you are so rich, don't you? You just throw everything away because you are so rich. Got it. So you've got very specific words that you heard. So how did that impact you? Is the question. Did that make you a hoarder? Do you tend to hoard and hold on to things? I'm very curious to know. And Sherry Lynn says, I don't remember hearing anything about money other than when I was little, like money grows on trees. But as a teen and young adult, there was no real discussion. And to this day, I'm a spender, not a saver. Thank you very much, Sherry Lynn, because you've just touched on the key words, and that is I am. As soon as we make an I am statement, you're talking about your identity. So remember, I said we can talk about the behaviors, the outward behaviors, for the reason that we under-earn or underachieve, right? Our behaviors might be procrastination, putting things off, not going to that networking event, perfectionism, like tweaking things but never releasing it. We could work on those outside behaviors, but what holds up the behaviors are thoughts. The thought that I'm not enough, I don't know enough, other people are better. And then under that are these underlying beliefs. And under that is the identity. So when you say, I am a spender, or I'm the type of person who burns through all the cash in my wallet, if it's there, I'm going to spend it, then I would invite you to really, really look at that identity and ask, is it true? Most of the behaviors we have been adaptations to the past. We adapt to what life threw at us, through our parents, through society, through the molding and the conditioning. We've all grown up in this very patriarchal, white supremacist, capitalist, colonized environment. And all of that impacts who we believe we are. But if you were to strip all of it away, then you're left with this pure potential. So you could just as easily say, I am wealthy, I save more than I spend. Or you could say it like this, I'm the type of person who enjoys spending and indulging myself and building up a prudent reserve, a savings, so that if emergencies come, I'm covered. Is this making sense? Yes. Hopefully so. So Lynn says, for my husband and I, We often guard ourselves from enjoying anything too much because in our past, that's when the rug would be pulled out or be deeply criticized to take you down a notch. Thank you for sharing that, Lynn. That sounds really familiar. So anybody else out there have that? Like I created a video that you'll see later today, I think, about feeling really good about an accomplishment and kind of wanting to share it with the world. But then there was this little voice like, you better watch it, girl. You know what they say, pride goes before a fall. Don't get too puffed up. Who are you? Getting too big for your britches? Or, it's the tall poppy syndrome. The higher you are, the more likely you could be to get chopped off. So if we've got that in our consciousness, that we believe that if I'm shining and receiving, it's going to have a negative impact, well, then it's quite obvious why a part of you will come in and sabotage. And that part, the part that makes you procrastinate or to under earn or under be, that part doesn't think of it as self-sabotage. It thinks of it as self-protection. Because deep in your psyche, there's a wounded inner child that's still stuck in time carrying those beliefs. And this was something that was brought to my attention really clearly was it last year? No, over a year ago. I was sitting down with some really brilliant finance guys. I had developed this business idea. I'm expanding my business and wanting to develop an online app for one of my programs. And as I was sitting down talking with one of the finance team about my spreadsheets, financial projections and all of that, the guy kind of looked at it and he was like, these numbers are really low, mate. Like, what's going on here? Now, on the one hand, I could say, well, of course they're low. I've been told, potential investors don't want to see totally hyped up spreadsheets. You got to be prudent. But for me, it struck a chord. It created a sense of resonance in me because I knew that I was underplaying my numbers. So what part of this requires is intellectual honesty and courage to really look in the shadow to see, what is it I have been carrying that's full of shame or guilt or not enoughness? Maybe fear because you made past mistakes, guilt over past mistakes. And so this really inspired me to get clear on the programming. And one of the programs that I recognized was my father, God bless him. And if you're watching, Dad, what's up? I love you. But one of the things my dad would do when I first got my first car, I was, 16. He bought me my first car. It was a Mercury Lynx. And he would always call in and check up on me like, it's been 6 months. Did you get the oil changed? It's time to get the tires rotated. And he would always say, when you're driving, if you see that needle getting to half full, go and get it filled up. And in my mind, as a teenager, I'm like, okay, Dad is just concerned with my safety. Yeah, I don't want to burn out the engine. And yes, I want to rotate the tires. Of course, I understand. It was my first car. But when that sort of trend continued into my 30s, and I remember the day of that major mind-opening epiphany, we were standing in my garden in Silver Spring, Maryland, and my dad was kind of surveying the yard. Now, I bought this amazing house that was painted, every surface that could be painted by one of the couple. He painted everything. And the other husband in this couple was a master gardener. So in my yard, in the backyard, I had a Japanese garden with 2 ponds. I also installed a hot tub so I could be there under the snowy, starry sky. And my dad and I were standing out there and he was looking at this, what I thought was a beautiful Japanese garden, if I do say so myself. I mean, I didn't create it. And mind you, these gardens were in the House and Garden Tour in Washington, D.C. Okay. So we're looking and I'm thinking he's going to say something nice, right? Like, it's a beautiful garden. We've got little fish and all this thing. And he was like, how do you keep that water clean? Isn't that a breeding ground for mosquitoes? What about the pumps? What about the gutter? Like that tree, that's probably dropping pine needles into the gutters. And like he's like pointing out everything that could go wrong. And I didn't take it personally because I was just like, well, Dad, Al across the street, he and his pops, they've got a garden maintenance company. So, and they know the garden as well as the owners. So they come over and they take care of everything. They winterize. Blah, blah, blah. And that was when he got to the major blow and was like, why don't you just get a job at a hospital? But back to me working with this finance team and going to some support meetings for fellow under earners, I started to really look at the messaging. So even though he never came out and said, I think you are incapable of handling stuff, finances, the yard, your car, that was the message that had seeped into my subconscious, such that at the age of like 49, when I was sitting down with these investors with this brilliant idea with over 20 years of experience, I was underplaying it because somewhere in my psyche, there was this fear, this, dare I say, belief that maybe you're not up to handling all of it. And so what did I do? It's the same process that you'll see in the Real Self-Love Handbook. It's called the cornerstone process. We identify the traits, the emotional reactions, the behaviors that we are finding troublesome now. And we plot a timeline of life events to see when and where it has shown up in our lives. Ideally, we want to get to the first time that it happened in our life. And that probably, if you had a major trauma or a major event, you might understand. Like for someone who, they immigrate to the United States after the war and they're severely limited with finances, and then you're born, specifically when those imprints started. But for some of us, it's just been a lingering process. You've been programmed and conditioned over time. After you've made a timeline of life events, you've identified at least one remarkable event that really sticks in your consciousness, that you can remember where you were, with whom, how it felt in your body, so that you can tune into that. And then I invite you to do the guided meditations. These guided meditations allow you to first create a safe space so that you're not shaming yourself or any parts of you. The whole purpose here is to integrate the shadow. We're not here to shame, criticize, or eradicate parts of us, because every part that we have, the procrastinator, the saboteur, they're all hoping to ensure our survival. In the words of Dick Schwartz, the creator of the internal family systems model of psychotherapy, there are no bad parts. They all have good intentions. So when we do the safe space guided meditation, which you can find online, you can find on my Insight Timer profile, totally for free. You do that so that you get your brain and body into a calm and relaxed state. And you literally get your brain into a receptive state, giving you alpha and theta waves, which means you have a bridge into the subconscious mind. And when you call up this memory from your childhood, and again, not a completely flooding memory that's going to send you into complete PTSD meltdowns, but you call forward this memory and you invite that younger version of you into your safe space so you can have a dialogue. Just get to know, what did this child need that they didn't get? What are the beliefs and assumptions that you've taken on about life? And you can, if it feels right, let that part of you know that it's wrong. The ideas and beliefs that you took on are no longer valid. For me as a child, when you're a baby, you believe your parents know all. They are like God. So especially if you've had experiences before the age of 7 or before the age of 3, when you're in that pre-verbal stage, all of the memory making at that age is just in mental movies. There's no language. And, before you're even in your 20s, this prefrontal cortex, all of this executive function, decision making, and critical judgment, that part of the brain isn't even online yet. So if these experiences happened before you could actually rationally say, Is that true? Is that false? Does that make sense? Then these other parts of you are just stuck in the past. And so you can dialogue with them to bring them up to date. You can also dialogue with these other parts, like the procrastinator, like the part that believes you're not good enough. And I say part because we are all actually souls or spirit, however you want to describe it. The real you, the consciousness that is you, is what we call self. In IFS, they call it self with a capital S. I call it in my work the authentic self because we get programmed. So in my case, I became the good girl. I saw someone wrote in the chat a little while ago that you were the scapegoat of the family. It's like, yeah, you're the one that gets all the blame. Well, one of my brothers was like the black sheep of the family. My oldest sister was kind of like the parentified one. She had to take on these parentified duties. So all of these aspects of ourselves are just parts. They're roles that we play or played in order to keep us safe. But at your core, your authentic self is the consciousness that is free from all of that. And so what we want to do is ultimately be able to bring in enough of your core essence to have a dialogue with some of these parts. And you might have to negotiate, you know. I love that Dick Schwartz tells the story of how he first identified that we all have these parts, and it's not DID. They used to call it multiple personality disorder. It's not dysfunctional identity disorder, DID. We're not talking about split off alters. What he found was that we all have them. When he himself was sitting with his client who had been self-harming, cutting herself. And he finally just said, look, I don't want to fight with you. And the patient replied, well, I don't want to fight with you either. And he realized that, there's a part that does the cutting, the self-harming, and there are these other parts, but the self is who you really are. Does that make sense? So I will start to look back on the chat. So to summarize, we all get programmed from our family of origin or wherever we grew up. A lot of the messaging that we get from our patriarchal, racist, capitalist society also imprints upon us through the media, through school. And all of that programming informs where we stand today. If we find ourselves struggling, always getting sick, always sabotaging, like not following up, like getting, a prospect, getting to the point where you might have a deal and somehow you mess it up. Or habitually overworking to the point of just complete exhaustion, and then you stop working altogether. Maybe you have like what I had, this compulsive need to prove yourself. Like even though I had demonstrated competence in my jobs and in my business, I was driven by this need to reprove my value. Another thing that I had was like getting excited and starting a project and then getting excited by another project and having just a string of unfinished projects. And all of that tied back to the subconscious imprints. So once we can start to identify them, unravel them, dialogue with the different parts, heal the inner child, and install other capacities, strengthen other capacities, such as courage, such as self-care, then we can really have a better chance at changing the behaviors that we want to see on the outside world. But it all comes back to identity and integrating and healing the shadow. So I'm happy to take questions if you have them. And I would love to have you join me for a private masterclass on Zoom so that you can ask questions and get live coaching. And I'll also lead you in another guided practice that will help you to dialogue and heal the inner child or unburden some of these parts that are carrying these behaviors of procrastination or perfectionism or imposter syndrome. If that's of interest to you, I've popped it in the chat before. I think I'll put it back there again. This is the conscious business masterclass series. This particular link will help you just add your name and email to a list, and I'll inform you every time we have a Zoom session, and you'll get the replays as well. And there you have it. It can be a fun way for you to do this conscious work so that you can step up in business. I'll also be going live on Insight Timer about self-sabotage in the shadow, the hero's journey, and how we can start to look at our lives from the perspective of the hero's journey to embody and carry forward our life as a new archetype. So instead of being the overspender, the under-earner, the underachiever, or whatever, the scapegoat, whatever the identity we'd like to shed and we'd like to embody something new, then stay tuned for that in June. So in June 1st, 8th, 15th, and 18th, I'm doing a whole bunch of live classes. So it's going to be a fun time for us to look at different ways that the cornerstone process can help you debug or defrag your hardware and your software and get rid of the malware, right? All right. All right, all right, all right. So Sherry Lynn asks, how do I stop spending out of feeling a void? Great question, Sherry. So that happens for so many people. You're not alone. It's wonderful that you've recognized it. So that's an A you get. I wish I had my sound effects button. You'd be getting like applause. So awareness is the first step in the cornerstone process. And awareness means having insight into what we do. That's why I ask you to do the guided meditations, the journaling, and the tuning into your body to find out what's going on. So if you already know, Sherry, that you're spending based on this feeling of a void, then I would ask you to tune in, do the guided meditations that help you tune into the part that feels that void. So whether it's a void from not getting the love that you might have wanted, or attention or care and compassion from a caregiver, it could be another loss in life for the rest of us, right? It could be other reasons that we feel this void. So whether it's spending or whether it's overeating, whatever that compulsive behavior is, it starts with awareness. And I would invite you to do the attunement meditation that will help you go through the entire process. So if you visit my website, andreapennington.com, then you will find all sorts of good stuff there. andreapennington.com is one of my main websites, and you'll find different ways to access some of my programs. You can also get many of my guided meditations for free on the Insight Timer app. And I'm going to be doing a live workshop in in June on Insight Timer. So if you'd like to spend a couple of weekends with me, then you can do that. All right. Let's see what other questions we have. Yes, Dahlia, you'd love this healing. All right. Private counseling, absolutely. You are welcome. Visit andreapennington.com if you'd like to work with me personally. Yes. Beautiful Sandra D. I wish I'd found you before my beloved mother died. She was sick from the day I met her till the day she died. I lived in fear of her death my whole life, every day. Oh, gosh. Sandra D, thank you for sharing that. That's a tough trauma to live with, that fear of having one of our primary caregivers, that fear of death. I'm sorry. I wish I could have met her too. So AB, I've shared some of the cornerstone process here. The cornerstone process is how you overcome these blocks and how you heal. So when you visit my website, andreapennington.com, you'll see a variety of free programs that lead you through the cornerstone process, which is in my book, The Real Self-Love Handbook. This is how I personally have been able to get free from all of these programs of not being good enough, not being smart enough, all of the not enoughnesses, the perfectionism, the procrastination, all of that. Yeah. All right. Any other questions? It looks like we've got all of questions answered except for this one. Batanai says, would you head back to the filming space if it feels right for you? Absolutely. I am currently in production on a documentary film about resilience. We are telling the story of 5 individuals who have come through significant drama and trauma and not only bounced back, but we are bouncing forward. So bouncing back is resilience, where you can get back to a baseline after some sort of accident, illness, injury, or what have you. And post-traumatic growth is when you bounce forward, when you learn the lessons from the painful situations in life and you come out with new meaning and a new appreciation for life and you cherish your relationships. That's how you can move forward with post-traumatic growth. So yes, stay tuned. We are finishing production on this film about resilience. We've shot in the United Kingdom, Dubai, the United States. We're shooting again. And I'm really, really proud of this project. And yeah, TV, film, all of it. I love it. I love it all. And one of the other things that some of you who are healers or coaches or therapists and you want to get your message out to the world, we have a new showcase coming up this fall. We will be inviting a small number of emerging luminaries to participate in a showcase where you get trained by me, including the psychological training to get clear from these blocks in your subconscious to integrate and heal your shadow, but then training as an author, as a speaker, or for media presentations. And then I will be shining the spotlight on you by hosting you for interviews or letting you get on stage at one of my events in the United States or here in the south of France. So these are the exciting things that are in the works for those of you who are interested. And if you're not a healer or coach, no worries, I've got you covered. We, in the spring of next year, my dear business partner and friend and colleague, Dr. Jill Stalker, she and I will be co-hosting some events for Innate Vitality, which is one of my other companies. And Innate Vitality will be hosting events, 2-day events around holistic healing, healing from trauma, nutrition, all of the vibrational essence that we want to like improve our aura and our energetics and our physical health. And we will be hosting a 1-week retreat called Conscious Evolution, where you can take this cornerstone process along with mindfulness, meditation, breath work, dance, movement, neurofeedback, all of these wonderful things, including energy psychology, so that you can level up in life. And that's open to the public. But if you'd like to join me in New York this September 5th through the 9th, I will be at the Omega Institute teaching Beyond Resilience, how you can use mindfulness and neuropsychology for post-traumatic growth. This is going to be a fabulous event. If you've never been to Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, it's up in the north of New York, and it's so beautiful. The campus is pristine, and it's a perfect place to come on retreat with me and work through your stuff in a safe, protected environment. We'll also be doing daily meditation. You have access to yoga, wonderful meals. You've got vegan, vegetarian, gluten-free, all of your dietary needs met. That is at Omega Institute. So if you visit my website, andreapennington.com, you will see the information on the Omega retreat, Beyond Resilience. And that is September 5th, 2022. I will also be back at Rhythmia in Costa Rica doing, I'm the featured speaker the week of my birthday. So that retreat involves 4 sessions with sacred plant medicine, ayahuasca and yagé. And these are mystical brews of psychedelic tea that come from the Amazon, and they are facilitated by really talented, skilled, well-trained medicine men and women, ayahuasqueros, ayahuasqueras. You could call them shaman. And I will be back at Rhythmia, being the featured speaker and participating in ceremonies in November. So I hope this has been helpful to you to just get a sense of how you can access what's going on in your subconscious mind, and then a step-by-step process to start unraveling the programming and the conditioning. When you check out my website, Andrea Pennington, trying to figure out how to point there. AndreaPennington.com. There are many ways that you can engage. Every month, I lead a guided meditation for free. That's about self-love and resilience. So whether you're on the business side, you can go to Make Your Mark Global, or you're on the health side, you can also learn about psychedelics and innate vitality. Just find me online and just know that every month there's a free offering for you to get questions answered, to get some guided meditations, and to level up. Because ultimately, I know that the gifts that you have inside of you are meant to be brought to the world. You are meant to be living abundantly. It's not spiritual to remain broke. That's a false concept. You don't, just because you've idealized Gandhi or Mother Teresa, doesn't mean that you can't be spiritual and be wealthy. In fact, you'll hear on an upcoming episode of the Conscious Evolution podcast, one of my dear friends and mentors, Sister Dr. Jenna from the Brahma Kumaris, talks about spiritual wealth and abundance in this physical plane. They are not mutually exclusive. All right. So wonderful to have you here. I am so grateful that you've been here, that you've tuned in. And yes, so Sherry Lynn, I think you just heard me talk about the one in New York, not in New York City, but in upstate in Rhinebeck, New York. Come check it out. And yeah. And so absolutely, if you have other questions or ideas, things that you would like to explore, check me out online, AndreaPennington.com. You'll find that you can book me to speak at your event, to speak on your podcast or your show or summit. Happy to do that as well. All right. So this has been a joy. Thank you all for tuning in, for being here. I look forward to seeing you in one of our live masterclasses online or on Zoom, so I can help facilitate going through the cornerstone process together, so that you can get rid of any more of these little gremlins in your subconscious mind, so that you can thrive, so that you can truly receive and give from your overflow, not out of obligation. Thank you for being here. I'm sending you many blessings for a wonderful rest of your day and your weekend. Please remember, you are a gift to the world. So share your presence with passion. Much love, everyone. See you next time.